Hello guys, welcome to another session of Sri Lanka DevOps community. Today we are going to discuss about Bicep with GitHub Actions. GitHub Actions allow you to create pipelines, and Bicep allows you to create infrastructure as code targeting Azure Cloud. Today what we are going to do is develop a simple script which is capable of deploying a pricing plan and a web app into Azure using Bicep infrastructure as code, and to explore how to set up a GitHub Actions pipeline to automate the workflow fully so that we can get the infrastructure as code written with Bicep deployed using GitHub Actions into the Azure cloud. So let's get started with creating a new repository in GitHub. I'm going to create a repository, a public repository named Bicep and GitHub Actions. Okay, make a small correction to the typing, and my repo can be created as a public repo, so I don't want to integrate anything else, and maybe I can add a readme file if I want. That's what we are going to do. So let's create the repository first. So now I have my repository created in GitHub. I'm going to copy the repository URL, clone URL from here, and I'm opening up the Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to do a cloning of the repo. So let me paste the URL here, and let me create it in GitHub. I have cloned the repository and opened it in my Visual Studio Code window. Now what I'm going to do is start creating the infrastructure code that I need. To do that, let's first create a folder called infra, and let's start with the pricing plan as the first item. So let's create a Bicep file to create a module for pricing plan. Pricing, keep it simple. Pricing plan .bicep. So once I do that, you can see language services for Visual Studio Code starts to work on to provide the syntax support, etc. for the Bicep code writing. So let's wait for a couple of seconds until it's ready. So these are getting applied because I have used an extension. So if I check the extensions that I have installed, so you'll be able to see I have set up Bicep extension by Microsoft. So that's why I get this language support in Visual Studio Code. So to begin with the pricing plan, I will try to type plan. You can see there's a resource plan, that is application service plan or a pricing plan. So let me press enter here, so which will give a boilerplate code for a application or app service plan. So let me try to add a bit of details here. So we can leave it as app service plan, and maybe even change the name also as app service plan. And we need to provide the capacity and SKU for these other values. And I might need to use properties and reserved as true to enable this as a Linux plan. If it is a Linux plan, you need to use these properties reserved true, else it becomes a Windows plan. These are things that you have to read through the documentation and understand, or like by doing practical work you might be able to understand. So let me start creating a couple of parameters, okay, I don't want to create this as app service plan, rather I'll have a name. So let me call it plan name. So I need to create a parameter for that. Plan. Okay, that's bad. Plan name, and I can type it as string. Okay. So, and the next parameter is location. The next parameter is SKU name and capacity. So let's say SKU name and capacity. So we can say plan SKU name and then plan SKU capacity. Capacity is integer, so let's put it like that. And plan SKU. You can see the IntelliSense is supporting me to put the variables easily. SKU name and plan SKU capacity. Okay, and so we have the module to create a pricing plan as of now. Additional to what we have here, we have to set up the kind of the plan. So we can either we can set it up as I think we can set it up as plan kind, another variable. So we can say, let's put it as another variable, plan kind. So to say is it a Linux or a Windows plan. So let's say plan kind. Okay, and even we can make this a variable so that we can make it when it is Windows we can make it false, but I'm not going to do that right now. It's okay for us to keep it as true because we are going to anyway create Linux plans. So I could have, instead of making this a parameter, I could easily, okay, let me make the life easy. App service plan, let me create it as Linux, and I'll make this as Linux plan. So to keep things simple, you can parameterize for sure, no problem, but I'm going to make it simple so that we can avoid passing unnecessary set of parameters in this demo. Alright, so we have a plan here, but once we create this plan, we need to be able to use this plan in the web app we are going to create utilizing this plan. In order to do that, we need to use the ID of this app service plan in the web app. To enable that, let's output. So let me put as output block. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this is the plan ID and type would be a string, and what is that is app service plan Linux dot ID is the plan ID. So this is the symbolic name, and I'm going to put it as app service plan Linux ID as the ID of the plan. So this will output the identity of the app service plan that we are creating to be utilized by the app service. So let's save this file. As we have the plan script ready, let's move on to creating a web app script. Let me click on new file and say web app .bicep. Maybe I'll rename this to pricing plan Linux and web app Linux. Okay, here we are going to create a web app. So let me type by web app. So you can see immediately the IntelliSense support is there. So if I press enter, the initial code segment is getting created. So I'll get rid of this tags for now, as it is not that important, but you can do that. So you can see the server farm ID. Server farm ID is the plan ID that we need to put in. So let's get a parameter for that one. Let me say param plan ID is type of string, and that is the plan ID here. Okay, that's good. And then the location param, location, and type of string, you can have that. And I need to have the web app name, web app name as string. Okay, and this is the web app name. And I make this web application Linux. And why I'm saying that is I'm going to set a site config here and say my Linux FX version is the Linux FX version. So I'm going to use a variable with the same name. I can say web app Linux FX version string. Okay, so this is web app Linux FX version, where you can provide Node or something else, or Docker even, to enable this as Docker based Linux image. But if you are doing it as Docker, you need to do some additional settings into this file. That is I don't exactly remember as of now, but it's, as I remember, enabling Hyper-V or something like that. Yeah, there should be something Hyper-V, I think, here. Yeah, you need to say Hyper-V is true. So then you can set it as a Docker, so you can supply Docker here, so that you can deploy Dockerized applications or APIs so into this web application. But here we are not going to do that. We are not going to even deploy anything on Docker. So like if you are passing this Hyper-V, you can parameterize it and say Hyper-V false for Docker not enabled ones. So Docker enabled ones, you can pass it as true. So if you're doing not that way and just hard coding it as Hyper-V true, you might be able to use web application Linux Docker as the maybe as the module. So it's up to you how you want to organize it, but organizing it as much as simple manner would be much helpful. So keeping web application Linux and web application Linux Docker template to do either one as you need would be much better way and advised way, because it keeps things simple. Okay, let's get rid of this because we are not going to do any Docker thing here. We're just going to create a node based maybe web application in Azure as a resource. Okay, so we have created code necessary to web application Linux. So let's save this, and then what we can do is move on to creating actual resources utilizing a main Bicep file, which we are going to do as the next step. Okay, let's add the main Bicep file, which will be the main executable, not executable, main script, which is creating all the resources utilizing these modules. So let's begin it as a main.bicep. You can have it in other name if you want. It's up to you, but I would prefer to call it main Bicep. Okay, so in my main Bicep, what I'm going to do is I am going to set the target scope So target scope I'll be setting as, I can set it as management group, resource group, or subscription or tenant. So I'll be setting it as subscription level because I'm going to begin with creating a resource group. So let me start creating a resource group. So if I say RG, you can see resource group RG. Now these shortcuts you might be able to find as you practice these things. So like if you search for resource group, that is not there, but if you press RG, that is there. So like, I mean, you will be getting used to it once you start utilizing it. So you can click in like that, so it will come up with the resource group creating resource block, so which you can utilize to create the resource group. So you need a new name for the resource group, and so let me name it RG name. Yeah, make it capital, and then RG location maybe, and I need to add two parameters. Let's say RG name and type of string. Easily copy it and paste it and just say RG location. Okay. Alright, you can see as we are typing in, this is becoming green when there is no errors, and then if there is a warning, then it becomes yellow, and if there is an error, it becomes red. So IntelliSense is helping here a lot, even if it is in Visual Studio Code. So I have installed required Bicep utilities, etc., which is necessary to make my development environment easy to develop Bicep, which I have written a post about it in my blog, so you can search for getting started with Bicep development environment, so where you can find all the information that is necessary to set up your development environment to get it ready to develop Bicep based Azure resource scripts. Okay, so we have the script here to create the resource group. So let me provide some default values for me to easily test this out. So let me say RG Bicep 01 maybe, and then location as East US. Doesn't matter, but I'll just set it as East US. Okay. Since we have a script now to create a resource group, let's try to see what happens if we execute this script. So let's open a new terminal, and we'll wait till the terminal is open, and then let me cd into infra folder, and let me do a AZ login first. Now this is how you manually test out your Bicep scripts. So I'll be logging into my Azure account, and be waiting like this, and until my subscriptions come up. Okay, let's take a lot of subscriptions. So let me copy one of the subscriptions IDs I need to use here. That is my subscription, this one. So let me copy that ID. Oh, I couldn't copy it properly, so let me copy it again. So I copied this one. AZ account set subscription, and then I paste the subscription ID. Okay, I'm now all set to execute the necessary commands that to test this Bicep script. So let me paste a command. So this is actually how we deploy Bicep scripts using AZ commands. So it is AZ deployment sub create, and then I can provide a name for this script execution, and then the location and the template file. So I'm putting the template file as my main Bicep. And to check what happens if I execute this script, I can put a body. Otherwise it will go and execute and apply the changes. So if I talk about Terraform a little bit, that this is somewhat similar to Terraform plan step, where we would be checking a what if. And it will take a little bit of time, and then it will report what would happen if the script is executed. Takes a little while because it's checking against the Azure connection and then verifying. There's no state file as in Terraform, so it would actually checking against the actual subscription whether there's a resource group by this name, and verifying if it is existing. So you can see it will be creating a new resource group, want to create, and the name of RG Bicep demo, and the location would be East US. Instead of using default parameters, what we can do is we can even supply parameters to Bicep script, so which we are going to do using the pipelines. But let me show you how it works. So I just have to say parameters here, and then I can start typing my parameter names. RG name, I can say equal, I can say whatever, RG, let me say Bicep demo param, and RG location. Instead of East US, I'll be okay, RG something went wrong somewhere. So let me type it again. Okay, let me fully clear the screen, and then start typing it again because it looks a bit weird. So it is dash parameters. So you can just say RG name. Okay, let me type what if later. Name equal whatever the resource group name, that is say RG test 001ch or something like that. So, and then I can say RG location, and I can type the value for it. So let me say West US instead of East US, and then I can say what if. So let's try to execute this and see how we can pass the parameters. Oops. Okay, so that is, I did something wrong because I have provided it's a spelling mistake. So you can see instead of parameters, I have parameters. So parameters, and then let's set this location as West US as well. Okay. So this should run it again. So you can see it's getting started. And once this is run, it will use the parameters that I have supplied instead of the default values, and show us that it will be going to create a resource group with the new parameters that we have supplied in the West US region. So let's wait a few seconds to see how it shows us. Okay, you can now see it's actually going to create in West US and utilizing the new name that I have provided. So let's move on and start writing the steps necessary to create the web app plan and the web app. So let's try to get the module. So module can be created using this kind of template. So let me say this module would be web app plan or something like that. Web app plan. Okay, make it capital. And then here what I need to do is I need to find the pricing plan value. When you press Control Space, you can see the file is already given to you. And then as the name, I can just utilize this web plan in that, because it's not the name of the actual resource, but it's the name of but you can see this is giving a couple of errors. That is because we have not passed the property parameters necessary. So we need to pass the parameters, and we need to set the scope as well. Now scope of this RG is the subscription, but we need to set this as the scope of the resource group. So inside the resource group, we are going to create the web app plan. So then we are going to give it a name, and then for these are the parameters. So when you press Control Space, it will ask for the location. So it will be RG location, and it will ask for plan name, it will ask for plan SKU capacity, and it will ask for plan SKU name. To make things easier, I'll just go and copy the parameters from here and make things faster, and just come to the main Bicep file and then add these parameters. So let me add a couple of default values. Plan name, let me say plan Bicep demo 01, and then let me anyway, okay, it doesn't matter, let's add a proper name later when we are in the pipelines. So I'm going to create resources. So plan SKU, I can say B3 or something, and plan capacity, I can say 1. Okay, so I'm going to use these parameters in this particular place, plan name, and then plan SKU name, and SKU capacity, and SKU name. So you can see there's no more errors, and this is that. So we'll just add another module, which is to create the web app quickly. So module again, and then this time we'll name it web app, and let's find the web app Linux Bicep, and this time also it's like, let's name it web app. You can, if you have multiple web apps, you can add web app 1, 2, 3 like that, or like different module names and names, and set the scope as resource group, and then I'll add the parameters that are necessary. So parameters would be location again, and plan ID, and the web Linux FX version, and the web app name. And location would be the RG location, and plan ID would be the web app plan dot outputs. This is how you utilize the output variables, that is output plan ID. So this plan ID came from pricing plan output variable name. So IntelliSense helped you to easily type this. So we can say web app Linux FX version. So we can add 2 parameters. So you just let's copy from here. It's easy rather than typing. So let me save some time by doing that. I'll just add these 2 and add some default values for this. So let me say app. Let me say Bicep demo 01, and then Linux FX version, let me say node, and yes, I remember it should be LTS 13. Then we can say web app Linux FX version, web app name. So we okay, this we need to make it a string. Okay, all good. So these 3 scripts are now completed. I think I need to make a small correction here. This should be node 14 LTS instead of the other way around. So okay, now it's good. So let's move on and try out if what happens if we execute this one. So let me pass it without the parameters to make it easier, and just let's try to see what happens if we execute this script. So it should immediately get started running, and once this is executed, it should create a set of resources. Actually, it should provide us a plan of creating resources because we have used what if. So if we have not used what if, you can actually directly deploy from your development machine into Azure, because we have already done an AZ login and like we have the credentials required to do the deployment. So I have the contributor permission for this particular subscription, that's why I'm getting that. So you can see 3 to create. 3 resources will be created. So this is really a good plan and showing us what is going to get created. So it would be a web pricing plan and a resource group and a pricing plan under the resource group and the actual web app. So that's all information is shown in the what if. So having that in place, let's try to get started with creating a GitHub Actions pipeline to deploy this particular script into Azure. Before we create the pipeline, we need to add a couple of secrets. So one is secrets to GitHub repo. One is like Azure credentials we need to add. Yeah, that's enough as a secret. So for this pipeline, so we need to enable GitHub Action pipeline to sign into Azure AZ login. To AZ login. To enable to do that, we have to do create a secret. First thing is we need to create a service principal. How to create a service principal is described in one of my posts, and like how to create a secret to enable executing Azure CLI commands using GitHub Actions is also available in one of my blog posts. So let me show you that particular blog post so that you can figure it out. So this explains executing Azure CLI commands with GitHub Actions, which actually requires a service principal. In Azure, creating a service principal in Azure is explained in another post here. So if you click here, like Azure DevOps service connection virtual subscription in another Azure. So this explains how to create a service principal. So you can utilize these articles and follow up with this particular session. So what I have done is I have utilized behind the scene while I'm talking to you guys, copied this stuff, and like I have used the app registration ID and the app password, or like SPN password, and the subscription ID and the tenant ID of the my Azure Active Directory tenant ID, and created this as a secret in my GitHub repo settings. So in settings, I have to expand secrets and click on actions and create a new repository secret, and I have to provide a name for the secret and a value for the secret. So in that way, I have created this particular secret, which we can only update if necessary, but I'm not going to do any updates. If I click update the value, you can see it as empty, so I'm not going to update it. I have already provided the values as specified in this particular article. So you can go through this in my blog and find out how to get that part done. Okay, with that, let's move back on to creating the pipeline part. To create the GitHub Actions pipeline, let's start creating a couple of folders which is required by GitHub. So let me click here. First, let me close all these files just to make things easier. and let me click on new folder and I'll type .github. This is necessary for GitHub action workflows, and then I'll say workflows and then Bicep demo pipeline, maybe Bicep demo YAML. Okay, so this will give me a okay, that's a wrong mistake that I have done. So let me reveal in File Explorer and just say workflows. I don't need a folder like this. I'll just delete this and come back to my GitHub workflows and create a new file called bicep demo.yml. Okay, let me quickly copy over a pipeline to make things easier for us to avoid syntax errors, etc. And let me try to explain this pipeline line by line. Okay, so instead of typing, I just copied and pasted a pipeline that I have created and tested previously so that it's easier. So name of the pipeline is here provided here, that is bicep deploy demo is the pipeline name, and this pipeline is set to execute on manual execution. So I have to go and create a pipeline run manually when I set it as workflow dispatch. So I could even set something like push as well. Sorry, push on push, something like that. Let me see, like what are the other things available. So there's no intelligence. Okay, I'll not play around with it, but you can actually deploy pipelines using workflow dispatch as well as push likewise. So you can do on push or workflow dispatch, and there are several triggers, but what we are doing is a workflow dispatch. So let it be like that without making any errors. And then I have declared a set of environment variables, and you can see what we are passing as parameters is RG location and RG name and plan name and plan SKU name, plan SKU. So we can compare this with our main bicep file just to make sure location, plan name, SKU name, and web app name and web app Linux FX version. Web app Linux FX version, we have a parameter called Linux FX version that should be okay. As long as we are passing it down incorrectly. So you can especially note here, like you can see double quotes and single quotes. Inside the single quotes, you can see double quotes are utilized. This is because that we have to make sure it's passed as a string, otherwise the piping will act as a because we are going to use a PowerShell execution script step. This will become a problem otherwise. So you need to make sure you are passing. I have written even a post about this one in my blog. So this is the syntax that you need to pass in. Like even if you're defining the parameters somewhere else and utilizing, still you have to use it like this to ensure this is passed as a single string. Okay, and then we are focusing on our infra folder and main bicep file. So these are the variables that I'm going to use, and my first job is actually kind of pre-dev, or like I can say this can be renamed to my plan, maybe infra plan job. So infra plan job runs on Ubuntu latest, and then I'm checking out the GitHub repository, so using a checkout action. And then the next step is I'm using Azure CLI login, Azure login v1 task, and I'm supplying the credentials as the secret that I have created earlier. So utilizing this secret, I will be able to create the connection between the pipeline and the Azure. Let me close the terminal window to make things more visible. So this one, like we are logging in and creating the connection between the pipeline and the Azure by doing Azure AZ login, and afterwards I can execute AZ command. So you can see we are using the same command which we have used in the terminal, that is AC deployment sub create, and we are passing the parameters as well. Here we are passing using the environment and then using the parameters and even the template file and all the names of the resource group. So this particular repository is public, so you can go and have a look at that one later on. So you can find all this code available there for you to utilize. So you can see plan SKU name and plan SKU capacity is passed, and web app name and web app Linux FX version is correctly passed with a what if command. So what we are doing in this infra plan stage is we are looking at whether this once we execute this script, what happens. So we are going to check what happens if we execute this script, and then look at the plan, and then we need an approval step. To enable this approval step, okay, now this is pre-dev, so I need to properly make sure this name is used here. I need this as the infra deploy. Okay, now you see infra plan is required, that particular job is required. So let me rename this as infra deploy job, and let me add the environment name also as infra deploy. So let me explain what this environment name does. We can set up an approval here, so we can look at the plan. It is, I mean, there's no point in looking at the plan if it is straight away getting executed. So we have to make sure once this first job, what if job is executed, it is stopping for the plan to be reviewed and then approved for the next level of execution. So how we can set up that approval? So let me set up that approval using few steps in our repository. So let's copy this environment name from here and go back to our repository. So let me go back to my repository and go to settings and environments. And once I'm in environments, I can say new environment and provide the exact same name of the environment and click on configure environment. And then I can put a required reviewers and add reviewer. So let me add myself as the reviewer. Okay, so I'm adding myself as the reviewer, and I'm adding save protection rules. So this will make sure before deploying to infra deploy environment, it will wait for my approval. Okay, so we are making sure this job is waiting for my approval after infra plan. Now this one is again using checkout of the repository and using a Azure CLI login to make the connectivity between pipeline and Azure, and then just deploying the resources. I leave the names etc as it is, and it's actually just deploying without what if. Now you can see the difference is there's no what if in this last one. So that makes this pipeline executes and deploys the resources to Azure. So since we have created the pipeline here, let's try to push all this code into our GitHub repository. Let's say infra deploy demo Bicep, and commit all this code and push all this code into my repo. So now my repo should have all this code available. So let's go and see if that is there. Okay, you can see infra is there and the workflow is there. Now if I visit the actions tab, I should be able to Bicep deploy demo pipeline. So since I have set it as workflow dispatch trigger, now you can see this particular run workflow option is available for me. With GitHub Actions, if you have used a branch and done this particular thing, instead of committing this to main branch, you would not see this trigger. So you have to actually commit this particular workflow with workflow dispatch to your main branch in GitHub Actions to enable this trigger option of manual trigger option. If you create it in a branch, until you merge it to the main branch for the first time, you would not see this workflow dispatch trigger coming up. So that's what I found practically. I don't know whether that is fixed now, but as of now, which I have tried, if I have tried in a branch, I would not see this run workflow. So then you can use a push or something. On push you can do a deployment, but I will try to run workflow right now. So let's see what happens if I run this workflow. Let me click these actions again just to see. Okay, you can see Bicep deploy demo is started. So it's doing the infra plan job. So let's see what does it do. Let's be hopeful. We have successfully created everything. Since I have copied the pipeline, created one, and like explained you all the steps, it should be ideally working. Let's see how it goes. So it's executing the what happens if statements now. So it's actually executing this particular step. So what happens if, like, it's a PowerShell execution task in a PowerShell core execution task in Ubuntu, which is actually executing AC deploy sub create command with all the parameters necessary, and you can see the line break is used here, and it is mandatory to do the Azure login. So that part I have explained already. So it has successfully executed and waiting for approval. So if I have a look at this, what happens if now I should be able to see what are the resources that are going to get created. So you can see it's gonna create a plan, resource group, a plan, and utilizing the plan, it would be creating an app. So 3 resources to be created. So that way you can verify the plan, and if you are happy with the plan, you can actually, let's say if I'm coming back to this pipeline newly, so if I click on this, I would see an approval, review deployments and approval here. Or if I go into this particular one, I will see review pending deployment approvals. Okay, since I have reviewed this, I can go to the pipeline. Either way, it doesn't matter, I click here or click the other place for the review pipeline. So I can review and say, okay, I'm happy with the plan. Plan deploy resources. Okay, and I can approve or I can reject the plan if I'm not happy. Okay, so once I approve this, it goes on and start deploying this plan. So let's wait a couple of seconds for it to get started. So you can see it's getting started now, and it will be logging in and it will be deploying the resources. So this way what you're doing is actually you are utilizing approval step to enable to see the plan with what if, and then after looking at the plan, then you're executing the infrastructure deployment. So that is really important because we are doing infrastructure deployment maybe to the production environments, where we have to be very careful with whatever the infrastructure that we are doing deployments, because if we are accidentally dropping some sort of infrastructure such as database, it would be a disastrous if there's no backups, etc. So I have explained in one of my blogs how to do these kind of approvals. So if I quickly try to do that, find that article. Okay, you can see manual approvals in GitHub Actions is a post that I have done, where you can find out more information about, I don't know why it's not loading the images, but it should be. So you can find out more information in this particular blog post. So let's go to the pipeline back and see if it is creating resources. So let me see if there is any resource group named Bicep by now. Yeah, you can see RG Bicep 002 is created, and you can see the app service plan and app service is created, and even app service, if we go to configurations, let's go to configurations, it should show us it's created as a node application. So let's wait until it comes up. Yeah, it's node 16 as we specified in the pipeline, and you can see the pipeline has successfully executed. With this, I'm completing this entire demo. So what we have done, if I summarize, we have created a simple Bicep script from the scratch to create resources, two resources, that is app service plan and app service app in Azure. And we have created a GitHub Actions pipeline, and we have utilized service principal based secret and done a AZ login, and then execute a plan using what if in the pipeline to see what are the resources going to get deployed, and then after an approval we got the resources deployed. So I hope you have learned something from this particular session, and hope to see you in the next session in Sri Lanka DevOps community. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thanks a lot.